And now it's my great honor to introduce to you our first featured poet, Alex Corring-Tachinbana. And Alex's first full collection, Sing Me Down from the Dark, is in its third issue. Jacqueline Safra described it as vulnerable, direct, and formally exact. These are generous, courageous, and devastating poems that will draw you in, hold you close, and leave you feeling wrung out but triumphant. She holds master's degrees in Japanese language and culture and in writing poetry and has been widely published in magazines such as PN Review, Magma, The North, Poetry Wales, and the Pomegranate London. She has also been placed and shortlisted in many competitions, including the Winchester Prize, Oxford Brookes International Poetry Competition, and the Troubadour Prize. In 2024, Alexandra was invited to give a lecture on the Japanese Zuitsu poetical form at the Japanese Writers' Conference in Futaba. She's working on her second collection and runs creative writing workshops for the poetry business at a writing school. And Alex, we have a tradition over here at Poetry Lit, where after this introduction, I do a little personal reflection on the poet's work. And so here is what I thought about your poems. Um, Milan Kundera's masterful novel, The Unbearable Lightness of Being, contains a dictionary of mutually misunderstood words, a list of words between two lovers that each of them gives a different connotation to. Even when we speak the same language, we speak a different language. We fail to understand one another. Something similar happens across many languages in these poems. They probe and investigate the limits of language and understanding, first and foremost with Japanese, not just in the kanji, but also in the time and place certain things are said, and the culture that shines through in the language. But there's also a deeper distance at the heart of these poems, a failure to connect, not just between husband and wife, but also between parents and children. On the other hand, these poems are also in conversation with other texts and writers, and in that sense, they connect us to people and concepts different from us that, without these poems, would have stayed out of reach, perhaps. So while touching on distance and disconnect, they also combine and join and play with meaning. And the other tradition we have over here at Poetry Lit is the asking of the question beforehand. And starting this year, 2025, which is also the last year we are running Poetry Lit. So we're working our way up to September, and then with a great big bang, we will end this current incarnation. And I'm doing the same question to all the poets. It's the most difficult question that there is, but also I think the most interesting. And the question is, how can poetry change the world? And we'd love to hear from you, Alex.
Okay, first of all, thank you so much, Mila, for that really generous introduction, and really interesting to hear your interpretation of the three poems that I'm going to be reading this evening. It's so interesting hearing different takes on them and things that might not have occurred to me. It is a really difficult question. How can poetry change the world? I think I'm going to give you some words of another poet on this, which is Coit O'Neill McCulloch, who I heard read in Edinburgh recently. She's a fantastic poet, and she was talking about this very topic. And, you know, it might be difficult for our poems to lead to sort of big, dramatic political changes. But she described poetry as an invitation to empathy. And I just really loved that expression. And it really sort of resonated with me, because I suppose poetry can take us into other people's lives and into experiences that we may not have had ourselves. And hopefully, the more we read and the more we engage with others through their poetry, maybe gradually it makes us more tolerant, perhaps, and helps us understand how other people have different feelings than us and live very different lives. So I was thinking about that, and yeah, Coit's words stuck in my head after hearing her discussing a similar issue with the poet John Glenday at her reading recently.
Oh, wow, yeah. And I think that's a great thought that poetry is an invitation to empathy. I love that.
Yeah. Not my thought, but thank you, Corrin.
So, and it's an interesting, thought to step into your poetry.
Mm,
So,
thank you. Yeah, so I'll begin my reading. I've got 3 poems that I'm going to read. I won't say too much in between because we're going to have an interview later. The first one is from my book, Sing Me Down from the Dark, and this was published in 2022 as Salt. I wrote this one in the lockdown, and it's called Body Language. It's about an Anglo-Japanese relationship. Body language. You rub up behind me as I wipe the Sainsbury's shop. Like that time babysitting when Bruce, the randy Labrador, stood on his hind legs and whined. I was 14 and had to shut him outside. He scratched at the door. As I leave for my lockdown walk, you say, Etchi, kangaite ne? Etchi, horny, aroused. 4 months ago, I took down our wedding photos. That 31-year-old on Waimanola Beach didn't feel like me. I put up a painting of the turbulent waves by Bamborough Fort. The trigger was an argument about Machiko, your sister-in-law. You defended her awfulness to me because she is Japanese. And the lack of sex. What do you expect when you've chosen to sleep on a futon in the spare room? And going back to the wedding photos, it took you a month to notice. You said you were so sad you could write a poem. You say I am no longer sharpu, a loan word for slim. Yet I thought the Japanese loved the notion of shiawase buteri, plump, happily married women. When I lose a few pounds, you say, bijin ni natta ne. You've regained beauty. Once upon a time, you were all I could see. I watched you sleep. And the day Scottish Maggie died, lovely mad Maggie, who made me Tupperwares of butter tablet, you wouldn't shut up, kept saying sorry, but you met her only once. I wanted to shout, shut the fuck up. Sei-sensei says the Japanese are good at carrying boxes when you move house. Today, as I leave this house, you ask with a teenagerish grin if I'm having an affair. In the exact same way you ask if I've sorted the recycling. Thank you. Thanks so much. So that feels like a bit of an old one now, because as I said, it was written in lockdown, but I had the really nice news last week that my book just sold out of its 3rd issue and is now being reprinted. So it was nice to kind of do a little bit of a celebration of it this evening. But the next 2 that I'm going to read are newer poems. The next one's called Unsuitable Things, and it appeared in The Interpreter's House last year. And it was sort of triggered by a poem by Sei Shonagon, who we'll talk about a bit later, I think. It's got a Japanese title as well. Fuzawashkunai mono, unsuitable things, after Sei Shonagon. Anna Barsan saying futotta na to a foreigner, haven't you put weight on? An elderly woman questioning the Japanese character based on a competitive game of bridge. pyramid tea bags that rip on threads that twist around your index finger. A mother who twists words, shutting down conversation with her daughter. Did you ring for a reason? A father telling his son he's a quitter because he leaves taekwondo. A son remonstrating with his mum when she unplugs his gaming PC. Are you a fucking moron? Chewing pellets of rock jaw gum for better facial aesthetic. A father who won't let him win at arm wrestling. And a mother who sees a rival in her daughter, who, as I bend to kiss her cheek, says, I thought you were going to eat me. Thank you. It is still a bit weird, isn't it, with silent clapping and everything on Zoom. I did a live reading the other day, so it's quite an adjustment between the two. But thank you for listening and for coming out on, well, not coming out, but giving up your Friday night for this. So my final poem is called Madam Gout, and it's a Japanese zuihitsu, which means to follow the impulse of the brush. And it does sort of zig around a bit in terms of the narrative. This one is in the current issue of Magma. It's a really lovely issue, lots of beautiful poems in there. Madam Gout, a zuihitsu after Benjamin Franklin. A few days before you get gout, you go to Blackfriars Bordeaux banquet with wine pairings. You dine on smoked duck, baby beef Wellington, asparagus and seared salmon, poached pears and Comté. The next day, your wee reeks of asparagus. You expect this. Ancestry DNA revealed this as one of your traits. At the Bordeaux dinner, you laugh with the girl with the auburn hair who looks like the vixen in The Chase. Days later, on the train, you're chatting to a tattooed Norwegian who says your sushi lunchbox is very posh. You feel your foot twitch, but try to forget about it. You tell him you're 8% Norwegian. You found out through Ancestry DNA. He shows you pictures of Trondheim. Sufu is Japanese for gout, your husband tells you when you get home. The next day, you cannot put your foot down or get a boot on. You hobble through the surgery car park in damp socks. The doctor shows you a PowerPoint with a caricature of a gouty foot. Your uric acid is very high. You could fry an egg on your big toe. Famous gout sufferers: Alexander the Great, Charlemagne, Pierrot the Gouty of the Florentine Medici family, Henry VIII. Each day, your husband asks, "How is your foot?" Says gout is prolific in Japan. Sufu, strong wind. Even a puff on a gouty foot is excruciating. A brush of the duvet hurts. You master new vocabulary: purines, naproxen, allopurinol. You learn there is no cure. You must keep your foot up, so binge every episode of Fat Friends. You know the theme tune by heart. Grieve when you reach the end. Gout, derived from the Latin gutta, a drop in liquid. The Gout, James Gilroy's 1799 caricature. A fanged monster with a serrated tail. gnawing at a foot, orange spears shooting from nostrils, a bulging purple toe. You drink Montmorency cherry juice. Your son says it smells like wine. You discover gout is the disease of kings. Henry VIII was so fat he was hoisted onto his horse. And Benjamin Franklin penned a letter to Madame Gout. Your husband says gout is common in Japan. Kidney tests say consistent with moderate renal impairment. You are dying. One of the desperate housewives ended up on dialysis. You sit on a chair in the kitchen, peel potatoes into the bin. Think of the Cornish painting of northern women in the ginnels, drinking beer and peeling spuds. But beer is high in purines. Cauliflower cheese off the menu. Zufu. Her father suffered from gout. Kanajo no chichioya wa zufu wo kaite ta. Many Asians don't have the enzyme to digest alcohol. Haru, your first husband, his little red hands after wine. On honeymoon in Sorrento, you drank most of the bottle alone. Madam Gout, you know my sedentary state, and on that account it would seem, Madam Gout, as if you might spare me a little, seeing it is not altogether my fault. Dialogue between Franklin and the Gout, 1780. You listen to dropping acid on Audible. For evolutionary reasons, humans, birds, and reptiles lack uricase, an enzyme which regulates uric acid. Your husband asks, "How is your foot?" For the umpteenth time. He is happy you are in the house when he returns from golf. Thank you.
Putting on my mic so you can hear me clap.